Good evening, everybody. Today we are going to present our analysis of CENEP with a specific focus on teaching and learning of English and also our proposal for its improvement. Next one, please. This is our table of contents. Next one, please. Okay, so we're going to start presenting our analysis of CENEP in Peru, as I said, with a specific focus on teaching and learning of English. So first, we want to praise the good points that we have identified in CENEP. One of them is that it is quite up to date as it departs from the communicative approach, not only for teaching of English, but also for teaching of Spanish as a second language. And we praise that communicative approach is the best starting point, not because its popularity in ELT context, but because of its proven effectiveness in any language classroom. Then we also praise that in the graduation profile, they have the good intention or the good intention that graduating students from high school have a good command of English because it prepares for the modern times. So students can get in contact with the world by speaking English. However, we consider it a very general goal and maybe not the best goal for every single Peruvian student across the country. Uh, we can say that such a goal is a very ambitious goal because we know that our country with 48 languages and not dialect, as many people confuse them, has is very diverse, not only in flora and fauna or climate, but most importantly to our context, it's very diverse in languages and cultures. That's why we should conduct before a previous need analysis that takes into account every single reality in order to set realistic and attainable goals. Uh, in this regard, two important concepts should be included, like length of exposure to L2, because many of these schools has only 3 hours, and in some HEC schools, the maximum amount of hours per week are only 5 hours, and maybe that's not enough for them or to get the proper exposure to English. And it was important to mention that the project Inglés Puertas al Mundo intended that students graduating from high school would reach a B1 level of English. Uh, as we have reviewed some small scale studies conducted in Metropolitan Lima, this program didn't turn out as we would like it to be. So if in Lima, Metropolitan Lima, it didn't got good results, it's not difficult to imagine what is a reality as we got far from Lima, from the capital of our country. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. So our proposal for improvement of CENEP with regard to English teaching and learning. First, it's an urgent need analysis for every specific context, not a general one like the one we have right now. Um, Also, a multidisciplinary work of stakeholders in order to set attainable goals. And also, in this respect, many views, not only from teachers, but also from many other field-related specialists, would be a good contribution in order to set realistic goals for every specific context. And also, learning a language, we should, every single stakeholder, students themselves, their parents, and teachers, should have very clear shared knowledge that learning a language is not the same as learning any other school subject at school, because learning a language involves not only culture but also identity. Two important concepts that we should treat very carefully. Exposure and attitude are also determinant in this context. We should get the commitment of students, parents, and also the community in order to reach the goals that we attempt to reach. And finally, maybe English should be implemented in later stages in a specific context. That is, in context with students have to learn a first language, the native language, Then they have to learn Spanish as a second language because that's the official language, the language with more prestige in our country. So maybe that's a priority for them instead of learning English as a young stage. And maybe later, when they have a good command of both their mother tongue and indigenous language and Spanish, maybe later it's time to implement English as a foreign language for them. Next one, please.
Well, if we talk about the first capacity, we refer to communicate orally in English as a foreign language. In this way, they aim to have all the students at the end of the secondary level in the level that they can communicate orally through various types of text in English. Also, they have to be able to interpret the intention of the interlocutor, as well as expressing themselves by adapting the text to formal and informal situations with the correct pronunciation, intonation, and also they have to be able to develop ideas around a topic, relate them around different topics, and using cohesive resources, especially vocabulary and a variety and relevant grammatical constructions. They expect the students also to use non-verbal resources to emphasize the message. Also, it's important that these students reflect and evaluate their own listening, what they are listening. Also, they have to be able to justify their position according to their knowledge of the subject and context. And in this way, they have to participate actively on a variety of topics and evaluate the ideas of others, and counter-argue when it's necessary. This is according to the National Curriculum of Basic Education. So for this aspect, we have analyzed that the students should have the ability to communicate orally with their partners in an effective way using proper vocabulary and grammar structures, as well as non-verbal resources to emphasize the message. However, as we can notice, most of the students here in our country don't achieve this goal of production in terms of speaking. Therefore, the execution and implementation of the lessons should be analyzed and restructured if necessary. For this, we have 5 proposals. The first one is to classify the students every year according to their English level. So it's necessary to have a placement test every year. Also, as a second proposal, we have to maximize the English hours up to 6 hours per week if possible. As we all know, most of the schools, public schools, they have just 2 hours. And in HEC, they have like 5 hours, but that is not enough. As a third proposal, and they can open English clubs in every school so that the students get used to speak more fluently. This can be weekly or even monthly, but it's necessary to have English clubs. As a fourth proposal, we have organized debates and different competitions to challenge the students. They should be able to talk in this part. This would be first among the students of the same school, and as a second phase, they can do it with other schools. Finally, it's good if they generate real situations with real native speakers once or twice a year. We can have some guests from other countries so they can maybe visit progressively different schools in our country. Or also, if students are here in Lima or maybe in Cusco, they can go to the main square and maybe they can find some tourists and the teacher can motivate the students to talk with native speakers.
Okay, let's continue with the second part. This is about written text and in English as a foreign language. Well, according to Minedu, well, this capacity is defined as a dynamic interaction between the reader, the text, and the sociocultural context that frame the reading. They also say that this is a critical understanding because it involves an active process of construction of the meaning of the various types of texts that you read through processes of literal, inferential understanding, interpretation, and reflection. This competence also implies that the student is aware that the reading of text serves specific purposes, such as enjoying solving a problem or a job, following instructions, investigating, defending a position, and among others. Likewise, the competition considers the reading of various types of texts. This text belongs to different genres, periods, author, are located in specific spaces and times. So this textual diversity is presented in different formats and supports. So to build the meaning of the text they read, it is essential that the students participate in social practices of reading in English that are presented in different sociocultural groups or communities. How? By participating in reading practices that the students contribute to the integral development, as well as in their community, in addition to knowing and interacting with sociocultural context. Next slide, please. So, as I told you before, this competence, generally the teachers develop only the part of literal level. So they avoid to develop inferential and critical level because it is a little more difficult for students to express or write their deductions, the author purpose or the purpose of the text. And this is because the teachers don't have enough hours to develop all of this. So that's why our proposal is to increase the amount of hours in her school and also in HEC school, and also provide the appropriate reading material in HEC and her school, because we only have 2 to 3 hours. So this is not enough to develop the capacities in reading comprehension. This is very important to implement reading comprehension strategies that, that are more appealing, more attractive to the student. And also implement activities to develop inferential and critical thinking competences. So the problem, for example, in remote classes is that they only focus in literal level. So that's why it's very important to try to the students to think, to reflect in their learning, to reflect what they are reading. Next slide.
Our write various types of write in English, text in English. This competence is defined as the use of writing language to construct meanings in the text and communicate them to others. So, however, it should be based on your close context, in other words, your everyday work. In fact, writing must allow the precipitation of the different sociocultural communities such as coast, mountain, and jungle. So next slide, please. The use of materials, contents, and cultural aspects. We believe that contents of the book are very general. It is not related to the reality of each region. For example, coast has its own customs, traditions, typical foods in the same way. mountains and a jungle. Writing tags. We consider that writing tags are not close to the reality because children could not write about their daily life. They could not write about their own feelings, opinions on their own culture. Teacher needs to be since to general writing tags. It doesn't not reinforce any cultural aspects of the regions. Next slide, please. Our proposal on writing competence, for example, in mountains, English teachers should send as homework to make comics based on daily life. As we know, comics have pictures and short stories. Therefore, students could write about their own customs and daily routines in a funny way. Next slide, please. For example, it is a picture of a book that was made by students, and this book is a series of comics, but these comics are based on daily life of the families of these students, and that's the way they represent the daily life of with their families in the mountains. Next slide, please. Next, okay. The students, another students' comments is the daily routines on their farms in the mountains. So it is a daily routine, how they spend their day in their farms with their animals, in recollect some fruits, and they transmit their culture in this way. In it is in a funny way. In it is entertaining. Next slide, please. In the jungle, linguistic integration. A language and a culture could be preserved within another language. For example, we can rescue an indigenous language by teaching it in English. In this way, they value their customs and traditions. Additionally, their cultural and contextual backgrounds could be used as a previous knowledge in this learning process of learning a foreign language. Students can write their own Amazonian myth and legend in English. Later, they can use it in they can use in English reading comprehension workshops. Next slide, please. This is example of a legend, of Amazonian legend, sacrifice, sacred promise of the Lord Carnival. It is a story of men that make a promise to the devil, and when the devil died, and he didn't get this promise, so he received a punishment. So it is a myth and legend, and like every citizen must have a certain promise in time of carnivals. So it is a myth, a legend that was written by a student. It is a way that connects his cultural and contextual background, in other words, his previous knowledge, which is linked with the learning of a foreign language. Therefore, it becomes a meaningful learning. It is meaningful because it was based in previous knowledge. Next slide, please.
Continuing with next section, we have a question: what makes a language necessary and what aspects are behind its necessity? And we can reply this question with a single word, and that word is power. We completely agree with Krista when he says that power will always drive language. Here we have selected three types of power that have been very important in order to make English a language with a lot of prestige. So first one, the social power. It has to do with a series of events in history, like the British Empire or the American imperialism, that has made English to have the prestige that it has now. And also events like when internet was launched many years ago, most of its content was in English only. By now, we know that there are many contents in other languages. Then, talking about the political power, the most powerful nations in the world are the ones who impose the language that the world should speak, and also the more powerful countries in terms of science and technology. They also impose the language that the world should speak. And then regarding economic power, again, the most productive nations and the currency of these nations are the one who are going to determine what language everybody in the world should speak. Next one, please. So, section 3, the beneficial effects of English. We cannot deny that English is the lingua franca of the world, and it serves for many purposes. First, to interact with the world, in order to be a citizen of a globalized world, and also to make easier and speed up understanding. Specifically, if we want to keep updated in disciplines like business, politics, economics, science, and technology. These are also the reasons for the spread of English as lingua franca, according to our 1989. However, does the spread of English benefit equally to everyone? Next one, please. Here we agree also with Ore when he talks about the unidirectionality of beneficial effects of English. Well, maybe only professionals who use English on their daily basis, like secretaries, teachers, language teachers, English language teachers, translators, and so forth, are the ones who only benefit from English because they make a living, they make money from English. However, not every single student in Peru requires English because their top priority maybe are having a good command of their mother tongue or having a good command of Spanish first before learning English. So must it be a compulsory subject in all schools, in all Peruvian public schools? By now, it is a compulsory subject because it has been imposed not only in Peruvian public schools but also across the world. However, students who have other priorities, but like learning Spanish after they have a good command of their indigenous language, they may find no reasons or no obvious reasons for learning English. And instead of creating or educating individuals, citizens of the 21st century, maybe we are creating in them that attitude, a negative attitude toward learning foreign languages. And maybe they will consider it like a frustrated experience or waste of time or also distraction of funds. Next one, please. Okay, so we're going to close this section citing Train, where he says language study is an initiation into a kind of social practice that is at the boundary of two or more cultures and languages. So we teachers, language teachers, English teachers, and everybody in this field should have very clear that when we teach a language or when we learn a language, we are not talking about an isolated word, isolated content. We are talking about identity. We're talking also about language and culture, and these three constructs are intertwined and we cannot separate them. That's why we should be very careful or treat English classes very cautiously in order not to damage a student's identity or self-esteem. Next one, please.
Okay, so we have to analyze now the roles of English, Spanish, and indigenous languages in Peru according to MET's proposal. As my partner mentioned, we have to be very careful with what we teach to our students, because we have to worry first about the indigenous languages, then our language, our official language, which is Spanish, and then we have to worry about the second language or foreign language. So that's why MED proposes the preservation, development, and practice of the local languages to live in a democratic and intercultural society, which is very important nowadays, because we have to make sure that culture preserves. So then, why Spanish is important? Communication in a multilingual country requires a specific language to facilitate communication among all Peruvians. We have some people that speak Aymara, some people that speak Quechua, Shipibo, and any other dialect. But we need one language to communicate among all Peruvians, and that is Spanish, that facilitates us to be in communication. Spanish language fulfills that function, and therefore its knowledge must be guaranteed for an appropriate usage, both oral and written, but without leaving these indigenous languages. Now, what role does English have in our society? The role of English plays in a particular society, both pragmatically and symbolically, an important influence both on language policies toward the teaching of English and how the learning of English is viewed by members of a society. For some societies, for example, knowledge of English is regarded as a sign of elitism, but in others, successful acquisition of English is normal and inevitable. But in this situation, in some countries where such an expectation is not present, students may not achieve the same level of proficiency despite a similar exposure to English in schools as in our country. So we must see this language, English, as something beneficial for us, not something that it is imposed. We have first to respect the order, right? First, the indigenous languages, then Spanish as a language that all Peruvians speak, and then English as a language that is going to help us grow, not only in our country, but around the world. So considering these MED's expectations about the achievement of the communicative competence, is the Peruvian curriculum idealistic or realistic? That is a question that we all Peruvians ask ourselves. So according to the secondary education curriculum program, students are expected to finish high school with the ability to communicate both orally and written. We think that such outcome cannot be further from our reality because of the results that we can observe nowadays as teachers. In that sense, we strongly believe that there must be an action plan that ensures the progress of the students at every level since kindergarten, because we have to make sure that these students, these little children, learn the basics. Then in primary, they acquire and they learn the basics in vocabulary and grammar, so they can learn more and they can become more fluent when they get to the secondary level. This is, for example, the frame that they have in the national curriculum. In level 8, they are expected to be like outstanding. However, according to our analysis, we can think that they stay in level 3, 4, or until level 5. That most of the students, they don't achieve level 6, level 7, and not, of course, not level 8. So that is something that we have to think about it, and we have to make sure that we have an action plan which is going to be analyzed and provided and also implemented by the Ministry of Education, because they have to give the order and all the teachers, all schools have to work in the same path to make it possible and make it from idealistic to realistic.
Okay, let's continue with need analysis. First of all, language curriculum development is an aspect of a broader field, no, of educational activity, not as a curriculum development or curriculum studies. The curriculum development focuses on determining what knowledge, skills, values students learn in schools. So we're talking about a public and private school. What experiences should be provided to bring about intended learning outcomes, and how teaching and learning in schools or educational system can be planned, measured, and evaluated. Language curriculum development refers to the field of applied linguistics that address these issues. So, need analysis also is commonly called need assessment, and is now often viewed as an integral part of second language curriculum development and review. So here we have some purpose of need analysis. So need analysis in language teaching may be used for a number of different purposes. For example, the first one is to find out what language skills a learner needs in order to perform a particular role, such as sales manager, tour guide, or university student. And also to help determine if an existing course adequately addresses the needs of potential students. To determine which students from a group are most in need of training in particular language skills. To identify a change of direction that people in a reference group feel is important. To identify a gap between what the students are able to do and what they need to be able to do, and also to collect information about a particular problem learners are experiencing. So it is important to understand how students perceive language needs change over the course of their English language studies in one school. So this is possible by identifying students' background and then conducting repeated measures of students' perceived English language needs. Next slide, please. Then we have the goal setting. Well, in English language teaching, learners' needs are often described in terms of performance, in terms of what the learners will be able to do with the language at the end of the course, for example, or at the end of the year. Whereas in general English course, the goal is usually an overall mastery of the language. So this is like what the teachers or probably Minedu want to. However, there are some questions that are more specific. For example, what kind of English they want to learn, what level of proficiency, for what purposes. So that's why here we have some questions too in a debate in the curriculum literature. For example, is there any value in teaching students a foreign language at school if they have no practical need for it? And also, should the language program for immigrants, so this is in the case of for immigrants, because this is based on the book of Richards, just teach practical life skills, or should it seek to prepare immigrants to confront racial and other forms of prejudice. So we are talking about also in public schools, we have many students who know how to speak in English. They are from, for example, Colombia, Venezuela in some cases, and also to the US. Should learners participate in the shaping of the curriculum? This is very important when we talk about the goal setting, because when Minedu established the curriculum, they don't ask for the opinion of the teachers or probably the learners, the students. So that is important to teachers, learners, and the parents should participate in the shape of the curriculum. In that case, 10, no? 10. Should students study the literature of culture of speakers of the language they are learning, or just learn to speak and use the language as a tool? And should teachers and students together seek ways to find fairer methods of assessment? So we know that, next slide, please. Next one. Thank you. Several key assumptions about goal characterize a curriculum approach to educational planning. So people are generally motivated to pursue specific goals because the use of goals in teaching improves the effectiveness of teaching and learning. So if we don't have a goal, it is the learning process is not effective because we have to focus on one goal. In the curriculum, we have many goals, but the problem is that they only focus what they want to do with the students, but they don't focus in the teacher. And the teacher is very important also in the learning process. And the program will be effective to the extent that its goals are sound and clearly described. So if we look in the curriculum, the only thing that we are going to find are estándares de aprendizaje, capacities, competences, learning outcomes. So, but in that case, it is very important to establish the goals that we are gonna use. But these goals must be not a dream. No, it must be something that could be realistic. Next one, please. Okay.
Okay, syllabus design. What is that syllabus design? It is related to the selection of contents, structures, parts, and organization. It is related with the goals, as Iris says, and objectives of the course of a student's needs. And we consider that syllabus design should be oriented to the present reality. Contents should be based on cultural context of each region, such as coast, mountains, and jungle. Also should focus on social problems such as drug addiction, alcoholism, violence against women, animal violence, corruption, and so on. It is necessary to emphasize moral values because students are developing their character as a human being. The main goal of a school is to give formative education based on principles and values. In fact, English course should be used as a pretext to teach them how to be good citizens, how to be good future citizens. So it is more than a course. It is the central goal to form a good citizens. Next, okay, thank you. Methodology. Methodology is concerned with the selection of learning, tasks, and activities. According to the Secondary Education Curriculum Program, 2016, the area of English is taught based on community approach. However, due to the pandemic, the production of oral texts has been omitted. In this way, English teachers all focus on production of writing text and comprehension of writing text. We consider that it would be great that set new methodologies such as text-based learning, because it allows to set a critical thinking about specific contexts as social problems, as I mentioned, alcoholism, violence. It is a good method, according to our reality, because the central objective is to form good citizens. It is the course, English course is a pretext to form these students in a good citizens. Next one, please. Evaluation. It judges that systems works. If the system works, it means that shows the result of language teaching, such style, research material. Besides, if the main goal could be reached by the students, it measures the methodology. We consider it necessary to have a formative assessment. In other words, to evaluate every day. That evaluate students' performance every class. Teachers should not wait to summative assessment. That is to say, do not expect students to be ready for a quiz or final exam. The evaluation should be every day in all the skills. And next slide, please.
So here we have collected some of our conclusions from our analysis. First one, a need analysis of every specific context of Peru is required in order to set realistic and attainable goals with regard to teaching and learning of English as a foreign language. Second, we have said that maybe English is not required for everybody because students who speak an indigenous an indigenous language as a mother language, maybe they should prioritize the learning of Spanish as a second language instead of English. Maybe English, yes, but at a later stage. So in those contexts, maybe English should not be implemented at that time, but in contexts where implementation of English appears to be reasonable, we should ask for the commitment of all stakeholders to take part in the achievement of the established goals.
Also, it is advisable to distribute the students according their English level when they start high school, so they feel more motivated to get promoted, and also to make sure they receive the knowledge they need according to their comprehensible level. They need to know what is their level, so they improve little by little, and they have the same partners to feel more comfortable. Also, it is recommendable to continue promoting indigenous cultures from our country through English. The Ministry of Education has distributed some books with this kind of information, but it has to be promoted in all schools. Promote different contests so students challenge themselves to develop speaking and writing skills according to their English level. This should be first inside the school, and then they have to do it with other schools so they feel more encouraged.
Establish online English workshops on Saturdays in order to reinforce listening, speaking, and writing skills. In this way, students can get more English hours.
Regarding to setting goals, a learning goal is a statement describing a competency or performance capability to be acquired by the learner. So it is important to define the learning objective and they clarify expectation about the outcomes from the learners. And also goals should be specific for the course, should be specified as well as for each single activity. The learning objective and the learning goals must be relevant. And the teachers should choose some relevant topics to be organized in a logical structure using various sequencing methods.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.